Ken Basinger.
Is there any public comment on items not listed on the agenda? Okay. Our next item is the adoption of historic review board minutes, but they are absent.
There are none.
There are none.
They're adopted this time.
Okay, let's move on. We can just fly through this. Okay, we're going to have two items tonight. HR 10-08, 1509 10th Street will be postponed until the 28th meeting, September 28th meeting. So,
Vote on the continuance of that.
we can make a motion to continue that to the September 28th meeting. Anybody like to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay. All right.
Aye.
Mr. Basinger?
Aye.
Ms. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, now we're set. We could do the air in your house, but I don't know if you know that stuff. You don't. Yeah.
I had notes from the meeting that's supposed to happen afterwards.
Yeah, well, it's after these public hearings. I could read the thing. You do that? Okay.
For HR 10-05?
Yes. Okay. We'll now commence the public hearing on agenda item HR 10-05, a request for approval of a new house in the McLaughlin Conservation District located adjacent to 519 13th Street. The criteria for approval of a land use action are contained in Chapter 17 of the Oregon City Municipal Code. The proposed development must comply with applicable provisions contained in the City of Oregon City Comprehensive Plan. Generally, unless otherwise noted, if a request is found to be consistent with the municipal code, it is considered consistent with the comprehensive plan. If you wish to participate in this hearing, including challenges for bias or conflict of interest, you must complete the sign-in form located on the table at the front of the room and deliver it to staff. Please do so immediately. The chair will only recognize those who have submitted completed forms. Testimony will be taken in the following order: applicant, testimony in favor, testimony in opposition, rebuttal by applicant. When recognized by the chair, please come forward to the podium, give your name, address, and make your statement. All testimony, arguments, and evidence presented regarding this request must be directed toward the applicable criteria or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which the person believes to apply to the decision. Please address only the applicable criteria for the decision. Please do not repeat testimony. If you wish, you may choose merely to agree with the previous speaker's statements. An issue which may be the basis for an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals shall be raised not later than the close of the record at or following the final evidentiary hearing. Such issues shall be raised and accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Commission and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of persons to participate in the public hearing, either orally or in writing, precludes that person's right of appeal to the City Council or LUBA. Written testimony submitted prior to the hearing constitutes participation in the hearing. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the decision maker to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. The Commission shall grant such request by continuing the public hearing pursuant to the standards contained in ORS 197.763. Do any of the board members have a conflict of interest or ex parte contact regarding this application?
No.
Who has visited the site?
I have.
Okay. Okay. So, once we have staff come in, then we will have things presented. Right? Good times. I've read everything, so it's up to you.
All right, this is a continuation of HR 1005. As you recall at the last meeting, the applicant had provided revised drawings and 3D elevations, and the board had a few small details that they wanted tied up before final approval, and it looked like it was easier for the applicant to go back and come to this meeting with the revisions, which I sent you in an email today and will be entered into the record this evening. Exhibit A will be the details, which should be on your agenda. They were added to the agenda section. You'll see submittal, September resubmittal details under your agenda of HR 1005. Those details will be entered as Exhibit 1 this evening. And HR 1005 revised drawings will also be entered as Exhibit D. Exhibit D this evening. Laura has sent me the PowerPoint, which I'd like to go through as a hard copy. And this shows the revised drawings and the next steps. Let's go to page 2. This shows the subject site. This is a lot in the intersection of 13th and Washington. It's on a slope site in the downslope area of Spicer's produce. Page 2, this shows the July site plan. It has not been revised, but Judge Applicant has provided additional information that the garage will be moved closer to the house and will be 6 feet separating the house and the garage. Next page, this shows the new revised elevation with the recommendation by Mr. McLaughlin to revise the front dormer to not have the set-in. This shows the revised front dormer. If you look at the next page, the left elevation, and I don't think anything has been revised from last meeting on the left elevation. Next page shows the right elevation.
Just the pitch.
Just the pitch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks good.
The pitch regarding
The front.
Oh, right.
They made them equal.
So the right elevation on the next page shows the lap siding pony wall that encloses the rear porch. And then the rear elevation, you can see that more in detail. The 3D drawings on the next page show the relationship of the new front dormer and how it relates to the roofing, how it doesn't have the set-in as it did before. And finally, on the last page of the 3D elevations, you can see the relationship of the house and the garage and the rear porch with its revised pony wall railing. And finally, the last page shows all 4 elevations of the garage. The second set that the applicant has provided are the details of the walls and the lighting and the garage door, and that should be in the next agenda. If you look at September resubmittal on your packet, or there should be, I made one copy. It was in the packet.
These?
Yes.
Yeah, we all have it.
Okay.
We're sharing. We're good.
I do not have a copy of it, but you'll see, I think I can do it from memory, lighting, garage doors, and then the front door. What was not provided is the man door in the rear, and I think the applicant was providing either a full light or a half light, and I thought on the staff level that was fine. So my recommendation is to approve with the conditions that were available at the last meeting with the revisions as submitted by the applicant, accepted by staff, by the Historic Review Board.
Okay. Is that it? Okay. So go ahead. Whatever else you want to add. It's your turn.
Jim Small, Oregon City for HR 1005.
Thanks.
In the on the 3D drawings, again, just a reminder that the windows that are shown here on the 3D, the computer wasn't able to
Right.
get the kind of window we want.
These are the ones.
Yeah. That is correct on the back door as well. Being a half light is the actual type of door we want to use, the style of door. Not sure of the grid pattern yet, if there is a grid pattern.
Anything else? No. Okay. Anybody have any questions for the applicant? Is there anybody here testimony in favor? How about in opposition? Do you have any rebuttal? Okay. Does anybody have any questions at all about this applicant? This stuff?
Have you chosen a garage door yet, or these are just the possibilities of everybody?
Yeah, those are possible.
This
Those
one,
are,
I see.
okay.
There it is.
You paint the doors, so I mean they come white. You could paint it to have that kind of carriage look. I mean,
Right, yeah.
that'd be kind of cool
Yeah, I believe there's probably black hardware as well.
for $50.
See
Yeah.
it?
Okay. Anybody care to? There's some other questions. Care to make a motion?
I move that we approve HR 1005 and construction for the conditions as forecast.
I second.
Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Basinger? Ms. Yates?
Aye.
Chairman McLaughlin?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thanks. Thanks for coming back. Thank you. Perfect. Good deal. Okay, our next item is HR 10-09 2008 1008 Jefferson Street. I have to read this all over again.
You don't have to read it all over again. We've already read it and everybody else has arrived, so you can just go through there.
Hey, will that work for the rest of the year?
That will work for the rest of the year as long as nobody else comes in.
Oh, you're just meeting tonight, but I was really hoping I could work that for the rest of the year.
Put it down if you prefer.
Well, anyway, if I don't have to read that, that would be sweet. Okay, so then we can turn it over to staff.
You need to go through if any of the commissioners have any extra cards.
I can read that part. I should read that. Okay. Okay,
What you're gonna do is do a motion.
got it. Do any of the board members have a conflict of interest or ex parte contact regarding this application? No.
No.
Who has visited the site? Okay. All right.
Okay. Unfortunately, I wish we did have our PowerPoint, but bear with me as we go through the hard copy. And then I know Laura's going to get a copy for the applicant to follow through. I also have on your dais the criteria that I think are the most relevant for this evening. You'll see one page of criteria if you don't have it at your based on how the board decides to go with their deliberations, if the board do want to make new findings for approval, these are the relevant criteria that I'm going to need the most direction on from the board. And so as you're hearing the presentation this evening, and you even physically jot down or mentally jot down how you would make findings for these criteria if you wanted to move forward approval of this application. If that is the case, I would be taking those comments and then returning at the September 28th meeting with new findings for the board to approve. This is HR 1009, which is a application for the approval of an addition of a property within the McLaughlin Conservation District. You can see on the page 1 of the map, Jefferson Street terminates at a section right next to the house where the topography is too steep. There are some pedestrian stairs that connect to Main Street. And you'll see from the arrow where the house is located. Next, this shows the site plan of the property and the subject addition. The addition is proposed in hash marks, and the existing building is in white. You'll also see that the applicant is proposing an addition that's pretty close, pretty much at the property line of the for the setbacks, while there's still addition in the rear of the property, but is not being proposed at this time. Next page. This is a photograph of the site looking up Jefferson, and you see the more prominent corner porch elevation. The addition is along the side, and it's kind of would be behind where the existing tree is.
Side that we don't see.
That you don't see, yeah. Behind where the existing tree, and there looks to be some picket fence on the other side of the car. Let's see. Next page. This shows the elevation where the proposed addition would be. The two-story addition would be a cross-gable addition that would take over pretty much the side elevation, and then would be incorporated so you would not be able to see the one-story addition that exists today. So the two windows that you see today would not be visible because they'd be blocked by the new addition. All right, next page. This shows a view of the house and proposed addition from the pedestrian stairs on Jefferson. So here we are at that section of Jefferson that does not go through and looking down. And you can see the second story of the main house and where the cross gable addition would connect up to. Next page. This is Madison Street. You're looking directly at the rear of the house, what it looks like. I'm looking at a confirmation from the applicant, is that correct? I'm looking at the rear of the house. So you can see the rear gable of the house from Madison. Next page. This shows the existing first floor. With the porch and the existing windows. Next page. This is the existing second floor. You can see you'll see the roofing of the one-story addition on the south end, the second floor. Next page is the proposed first floor addition. So this shows the bedroom addition that would be on the first floor. And the hash mark shows the areas that are existing. Next page, proposed second floor, and this shows the cross gable addition of the new bedroom and storage space. Next page, this shows the existing elevation, and what you see in this plan view is the, to your right is that recessed one-story addition. Next page, this is also the side elevation of the existing addition. You see that one-story addition. Next page, the proposed elevation. You see the cross-gabled two-story addition now under proposed elevation. Next page, this shows the proposed elevation on the side elevation. So you'll see the cross-gabled two-story addition and how it connects up to the existing one-story addition. And the next page, I just briefly showed the framing plan, so it reiterated how the addition was going to be, the roof would be integrated in as a cross gable addition. Next page. Specifically, this is the same page that you have as a loose sheet. But these are the criteria that I believe the applicant does not meet, and I go through them real briefly, but then also have you think of, while you're reviewing and deliberating the application, keep in mind these criteria. The first two criteria come from our adopted design guidelines for alterations and additions, and that's new additions shall be cited so the impact of the primary facade is kept to a minimum. Additions shall generally be located at the rear portion of the property or in such locations where they have the least visual impact from the public ways. And I feel in this situation, the cross gable addition set back only 18 inches from the front of the house. While it may not be as prominent of an elevation, it's still the front elevation, and I feel that the applicant does not meet this criteria. And as a result, will create a pretty large visual impact because the width of the house will be greatly increased with this new addition because it is so far close up to the main volume of the house that you no longer see the historic volume, you start seeing the volume and the addition. The second criteria that comes from our design guidelines that I feel the applicant does not meet is, in addition to zoning requirements, the relationship of new additions to the street and to open spaces between buildings shall be compatible with adjacent historic buildings and with the historic character of the district. As you found in my staff report, I do feel that this addition does adversely affect the house and historic significance of the house, and therefore, because the historic significance is affected, that in the long run does affect the significance of the conservation district. And each designated building that we lose is just one more building that lessens the contributing status of any future National Register district, or just in general the health of the conservation district. Third, the third criteria: the historic character of a property shall be retained and preserved. The removal of historic materials or alterations of features and spaces that characterize a property shall be avoided. And for this, I'm going to read my actual findings. This comes from the Secretary of Interior standards. And these were also adopted by the Historic Review Board in 2001. As a certified local government, we are also tasked to meet the Secretary of Interior standards, and they are 30-year plus standards that are reviewed nationwide and have a long history of and practice of making a way to look at historic additions to buildings. And so what this does, this gives us a wealth of background. And I know the Historic Review Board looked at the Secretary of Interior standards with the Atkinson Church as well. So these are really helpful when we get to these kind of really gray area issues. It's nice to go to the Secretary of Interior standards, but these are my findings for the historic character section. Almost 25% of the materials contained in this building, or nearly the entirety of the southwest elevation, will be removed to accommodate the new addition. Although none of the historic materials slated for removal are necessarily character defining, the asymmetrical front facade identified as a vernacular building style typical of the McLaughlin neighborhood and the surrounding structures will be substantially altered. Second, the second Secretary of Interior standard criteria that I feel is relevant is each property shall be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use. Changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as adding conjectural features or architectural elements from other buildings, shall not be undertaken. And I'd like to read the finding for this. The addition can be seen as creating a false sense of development. The large volume and small setback of the addition, coupled with the use of materials and details that are identical to the ones used historically, could give the illusion that the addition was part of the original structure. Slightly changing the details of the window molding and siding width could help mitigate the addition's effect on creating a false sense of history if the setback could not be increased. And finally, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. And finally, my finding for this section is, as discussed, the addition can be seen as creating a false sense of history. As proposed, it would be very hard to differentiate the new addition from the historic structure. The proposed large volume, when compared with the relatively narrow existing house width, small setback of the addition, plus the additional roof mass originating from the peak of the historic roof line, coupled with the use of materials and details that are very nearly identical to the historic materials, could give the illusion that the addition was part of the original structure. Slightly changing the details of the window molding and siding could also help mitigate its effect on creating a false sense of history. I'd like to go on the last page of the PowerPoint. Sort of in summation, staff believes that the applicant has designed an addition that on its own is historically proportional, well-balanced, and mimics fenestration and details found from the historic Emanuel Bushing House. However, the location and size of the addition has created a volume that competes with the historic house and creates a false sense of history. As proposed, staff finds that the addition is not compatible with the historic house and recommends denial. On the last page, I've given the board has three options this evening. One, you could deny the application and adopt staff's findings. Two, you could approve the application and provide direction for staff to return with revised findings at the September 28, 2010 board meeting. Or three, request that the applicant resubmit revised drawings for the September 28th board meeting, which can better meet the adopted criteria. And please provide direction to the applicant on the revisions. Just wanted to kind of give a little background of why there's a recommended denial for this application after the board had a preliminary design advice. And I spoke with Carrie Richter about this issue as I began to put the staff report together. And, you know, I'm on a staff level, I'm tasked to look at the adopted criteria and make my best staff's recommendation based on my background and knowledge and my interpretation of the code. And that's what I felt I needed to do on my level. You are the Historic Review Board. You are appointed review committee appointed by the City Commission and Mayor. And so you have the ability to take my recommendations, but yet still use that as your decision making, and you could come up with a different finding than mine. But on my staff level, I felt that I needed to write a staff report that recommended denial, and I'll pass this over to Carrie Richter a little bit to give a little background, kind of on what my role as staff is and what your role of the board is, and what kind of the next steps that she sees that the board can do.
I would only add that the HRB's design advice was advisory. It was just that, and it's not binding at all on the HRB. I don't even know if this current makeup of HRB was present at the time of the design advice. So staff has made an independent interpretation of the criteria, but as Christine explained, you can make a different interpretation. The criteria are highly discretionary, as you know, and you may interpret them differently, and we are here to implement your decision.
Can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. The addition that's on the house now, what date was that added?
I don't have a specific date, but it looks like from the inventory form that it was added. It probably from the first 20 years of the. Yeah, I mean, probably nothing after 1930, sometime 1910 or 1920 to get the addition.
So you couldn't count that as change?
That addition has gained significance over time. It's definitely over 50 years old and has gained significance over time.
As proposed, is it necessary to get a variance to construct a new addition close to the property line, or is that acceptable as is?
If it meets the setback, it does not.
Does it?
Let me verify. I believe it is, but let me verify.
On the landscape, so there's 5 feet on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got 5.
But they need a setback. Inadvertently, I also would like to add as Exhibit A into the record the design advice pack, PowerPoint that was presented at the July meeting, and that is on your agenda, and will be Exhibit A to add to the record.
Well, I was not present at the July meeting. I don't know if anybody else, who the rest of you here. Okay. So you're here because we have staff recommending denial, correct? And staff recommends approval. I can see you. So I guess
Ordinarily, you don't have a situation where the design advice recommended, it wasn't a recommendation of approval. The design advice was that this satisfies the criteria. And we have staff feeling like a more conservative interpretation is appropriate. And that's why I'm here.
I mean, just, I see you when there's problems.
Lawyers are to prevent problems.
So says they.
That's all I have planned for this evening to present, so I can go now. What you would prefer?
Later is the song and dance. No, I'm just curious.
I requested that Ms. Richter to be here this evening.
Okay, let's check it.
I have another question. The existing first floor and the proposed first floor. The proposed first floor is not showing the porch. Does that mean it's going?
No, I believe that was just a way to simplify the drawing.
Okay, so are we good with your guys in?
And you
Start with
can-
the applicant?
And then any questions, you can come back.
Okay.
I just have a question, I don't know if you can answer it. There's a letter in the packet from a neighbor, Ms. Osborne.
Yeah, and I was wondering if she was here this evening, and she looks like she's not. I spoke with her, and she indicated she was going to be here this evening.
And it looks like she lives in the house up the hill.
She does.
The White House?
Mm-hmm.
Is it blue?
Oh, sorry, you need to get on.
Yeah, why don't you come on up here and state your name and your address?
Ms. Osborne, she's not here this evening. Her comments are in the record.
Edwin Kozel, address is 1008 Jefferson Street.
It's not in the picture, it's not the White House, like this guy right here, his house.
No, it would be 811 in the area photograph.
You know, when I drove up there to print pictures, is that the house? Okay. Alright.
My question is, if I can go back to that, there's a page that says view of house and proposed additional location from pedestrian stairs on Jefferson. Is the house that Ms. Osborne lives in, is that a little bit to the right of where this picture is?
If you look at your page that shows the vicinity map, I'll tell you exactly which house it is. If you look just to the south of the identified property, you'll see an 811 under a white roof. Her property is a bit odd. It has a little bit of a finger that pops out towards Jefferson Street that abuts the applicant. It's hard to see.
It's not
Yeah.
like 807 doesn't wrap around.
Part of 807, it's part of 811's backyard is behind 807.
Oh, I gotcha.
So it's this little weird finger that
Okay.
that fronts both on Jefferson and 9th.
And how far out towards Jefferson Street does the Ms. Osborne's property go?
Oh, it's hard to.
I think it goes all the way, because she's got her grapevines are right up above ours, right along the stairway there, so.
I want to say it's about a 20 or 30 foot frontage on Jefferson.
So she's got this finger thing going
Yeah.
behind 807 that extends over.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's a big level flat place up there where she's got her garden, and that's what she's referring to as her privacy area. And I understand her concerns. I actually spoke with her prior to submitting the application, and we discussed things back and forth, and she expressed her concerns. And If we could not have a window there, I'd love to do that to satisfy her, but we need an egress window in the upper story, so it's the only logical place for it. I did recommend, and I'm fully prepared to build her a fence or put up some other vegetation or something that would help her to maintain privacy in that area of the property.
She's been there a long time.
So it looks like from the pictures that there are trees that block the view from your lot to her garden area. Am I not right? There's trees.
This one looks like it.
Oh, yeah, there's a maple tree
Uh-huh.
that's towards the back of our house that actually would block the view of the addition from her house directly. Her concern is more with that lower area of that finger, as you called it, that juts out.
So it is visible from your proposed upper window?
Yeah, so basically, with that 6-foot offset, that upper window would be, right at the level of that garden area that she's got. Again, it's not ideal, but there's ways, I think, to mitigate that and to address that.
Well, maybe tell us a little bit about what you wanted to do and how you're proposing to
So,
minimize that and so forth.
There's obviously some issues raised here, and I'm definitely disadvantaged to address them or deliberate them. And I don't know if there's any utility in going by point, but basically, we've got a growing family. We've got 3 kids and 2 bedrooms, and we needed some additional space. We took a look at the geometry of the house and came up with a couple different options, taking into consideration the criteria for the historic review, but also the geometry of the house, and it's the only, in our minds, logical, feasible place to do an addition on the structure. We talked about additional setbacks last time, which would shrink the room to the point where it's not functional. There'd be no way to get in it. If you did, there's not really any place on the back side of the house to where you can do an addition that would really make any sense. We felt that based on where we were putting it and the special nature of the street right in this area, that it has a very minimal visual impact on the area and the neighborhood. It's not hardly visible at all from 11th Street, and you can't see it until you get up Jefferson Street to where it dead ends. Basically, the only people that are there are us.
So by adding on what amounts to about an 8 by 13.5 addition, you're looking to gain 2 very small bedrooms, essentially.
Yeah, for sure.
Can I ask you, if it's all right, when I look at the plan, and I'm just talking from conversation's sake, when you said that you looked at possibilities for the rear of your property on the house, did you ever look at, and maybe you did, like where your laundry is? If that was to, and I'm just talking, if that was to have a section that was added to the rear, that would accommodate an additional bedroom and laundry room, that would be with the, I'm just talking, that if you could make the bathroom in between these 2 bedrooms and have the laundry room / bedroom in the back, because you guys don't have a garage, right?
No, that's no garage.
I mean, did you ever think about something like that?
Yeah, so what you're suggesting, just talking, would be to replace the bathroom and laundry room area with a new room, or?
But you could make a bathroom, laundry room, Jack and Jill bathroom, 2 bedrooms, because you have this existing bedroom or office whatever you're using. But you add on where the laundry room is, you go back.
But we've only got 2 feet there before the back edge of the house. So I don't see.
No, like where your laundry room is, couldn't you take that wall and go back?
Make a new footprint.
Add on to the back.
So the entire back of the house?
Or half of it, like where your kitchen bump out is?
Yeah.
That part from there, take it out. Take it out.
Potentially, that would eat up a significant amount of our usable backyard
That's
space.
like
Yeah.
Don't know how much, I mean, it shows you've got quite a distance before your 20-foot setback, but I don't know what your topography is.
We looked at potentially actually, because it's got a covered back porch, and so we looked at options for, walling that in and bumping that out. We actually got quotes from our contractor on doing that. It doesn't gain us a whole lot of square footage unless you encroach substantially on the backyard.
Yeah, that's what
And right now, the space where we've got the proposed addition is not being utilized for really anything. It was a dog run at one point, and right now it's just kind of dead space that isn't really useful for anything but an addition. But
yeah, because I don't have any. I mean, we don't have anything for a rear elevation.
yeah, and I mean, we didn't go into great detail looking at that option.
Yeah.
But we did briefly consider it. Part of the problem we have too is the multiple roof lines and tying them all together in a way that makes sense architecturally. And we looked at doing the addition where it's at right now, but leaving it at one story. And the roof on the side is gabled, and it's got the shed type roof, and trying to tie a third roof line into that at the first story, and then make it look right with the covered porch on the front of the house it's really problematic tying anything in. And so that's one of the things that appeal to me most about doing this as a two-story addition, is that I think it ties in nice as far as the roof line goes with the existing structure.
Yeah, they're tiny rooms.
Yeah, but that's, think about all we can squeeze out.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that through my head, how do you, I mean, basically, you got two small rooms that are 8 by 13, essentially.
Mm-hmm. For livability purposes, our intent was to leave them somewhat open, so the downstairs would actually become one room where we're going to leave an open archway door, and it would be a children's room basically. And then the upstairs we're going to do a similar thing and have it just one continuous room space for older son.
Are there any questions?
Did your architect look at other options to this extension on your roof line? Did you talk to him about that?
No.
Is it an architect or a designer?
An architect.
So, I mean, I don't know if this, if there was something like a little gable plan here or another gable roof instead of flat, would that make a difference? Only because I know it's altering, but would it be more in line with?
This is a perfect example of how you find that balance between being compatible and not getting lost into history. And the design is very compatible to the point where it's lost into history. So you start adding other design elements that start to show this different addition. Are those design elements creating something
Right.
My problem with the addition always has been business location. I could never come up with an easy remedy because of the use of holy and then being 2 stories and being crossing over to
The thing is, though, historically, when people were poor, like now, they would have built a house like this and almost looks like a shotgun. But over time, when they could afford, they would add on, and where they do it, it's just like on a cross. They go out to the right and they tie into the road.
Like they did that little room.
Yeah, and so, and that's been the problem. It's not that the addition is designed very well. It's just, I believe it doesn't speak.
I hear you. I hear all that stuff. And whether that addition was in 1910 or 2010, it's evolved. But I hear what you're saying. This is such a vernacular house, and it's single wall construction. It's probably in balloon frame. When you open up the walls, and it's just you see through it. So it's an old house. Back in the day, it was just a common plain Jane house, and now it was beautiful. So to put on this, it would look great, as Christina said, but it would also make it look like this is how it was when they built it. And that's the kicker. That's where it's like we're walking this line. And the way you do things are, like Christina said, 18 inches doesn't do a lot to show a delineation. And typically, when you'd see like an addition like you're doing, it would have been set back almost to the halfway point on this part of the house. It would have gone back, there would have been a porch there, and it'd be very clear. This is pretty much slammed up. I think we all get why it's where it's at.
And that's the thing is that there's other places that probably could have put it, but I don't think it would have looked nice. And I don't want to spend a bunch of money on a
Right.
junky looking addition.
Yeah, so then, and we talked about this, is like, how do you change this? How do you do what you're doing to make it look like it is separated? And it's frustrating to figure that out.
They also have several comments.
What comment?
I don't want to get into designing this.
No, we can talk about it when we get to the point where we're done. Yeah. But I guess we talked about and discussed about you can change materials and you can, but yeah. Anyway, this is what you. Did you want to add anything? I think we totally understand and get your position.
Yeah, I think we're all
aware. Okay. All right. Well, we could talk design all night. Let's, if you can, if you're done good, I think we're good. Is there anybody that's here in favor? Oh. Yeah. Did you want to come up and make any comments? That works. How about any testimony in opposition? No. I have a rebuttal by the applicant.
Neither opposition or in favor.
I did in favor and in opposition.
They did neither either.
Oh, there's middle of the road? Is that what you're saying? Because that must be, that would be 3.5. That seems to be unnamed, I guess. Well, whoever that might be, if they haven't written their name down, I think we're fine with that. And, yeah, unless then there you go. Or I have a grocery. Go ahead and state your name and your address, please.
Denise McCourt, and I was here previously, and address is 815 Washington Street, and I was here previously on this item.
At the July meeting? Yes, okay.
Just made some general comments. I don't think we were, was here on behalf of the Neighborhood Association. We didn't have any discussion pro or con other than going back over to look at the house, which I did on several occasions, just kind of walked up, kind of stood there for a while, looked at it. And I guess what I would like to recommend to you, rather than, I don't know what the timetable is, but I think I totally understand everything that staff is saying, and I think that this drawing is quite a bit more detailed than the one that was at the July meeting. And the profile on sheet A3 really stands out to me in the sense that
What are you looking at this?
the sheet A3
Yeah.
that shows the existing elevation into A, and then it shows the elevation on C, which is also the front of the house. And I guess part of what I wanted to suggest is maybe taking the idea that John has set in motion to look at this yet one more time, and I wish Todd was here because, you know, he likes to draw things real fast, that there may be another alternative. I don't know what that is. I don't draw, but I think that the points about tying the roof in and all that, and I think, again, you know, the two-story addition is kind of what takes away from the historic integrity of the house. I agree with everything everybody said. You understand why it's being done. But this is, again, one of those, even though we have a lot of vernacular houses in Oregon State, each one of them, I think, is very different in the sense of the way they were designed, how they evolved, and generally they would have evolved over time by adding onto the side the way it exists currently, and also they would have gone to the back. And I think that, you know, those of us who live in the McLaughlin neighborhood who have teeny tiny postage stamp yards, or no yards at all, with children, you know, maybe that's a sacrifice you have to look at. We have a lot of parks in our neighborhood. There's lots of places to go to play, and when kids get a little older, they're not in your yard anyway. They're out running around with their friends. So maybe that is an option that should be looked at, to look at possibly going out the back, or maybe even, you know, the side. I just like to see you give it one more shot, because I think there might be a third solution. And that's really all I want to say about it.
Thank you. Okay, now I'll go to rebuttal by the applicant if you have any comments in regards to that. You don't? Yeah. The only thing I'd like to see that I don't, would be a rear elevation. You said you have a shed roof or a back porch on the back? Is that right?
Correct, yes.
How far does that project out, do you think?
It's just 3 feet or so.
Just as a 3 foot ever with like a little porch in the back?
Yeah, just a little patio.
And that's coming off your kitchen door?
Correct. So not a real opportune place for a bedroom.
Your kitchen door is right there.
Correct.
And then you've got a sink and a window?
Yes.
Double windows?
Just a single window.
Single window over the sink?
Yes.
Okay. What if, oh shoot. Anybody have any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Should I go first? Anybody else want to give your opinions?
Go ahead.
Because I definitely have one.
I will.
But, you know.
What we discussed in July regarding the proposed floor plan is the way the house sits on the site, even with the minimal setback on the addition, it's not highly visible because the road ends there, and the street view doesn't really change all that much. The existing facade remains dominant. I didn't do that.
My mic's probably on, but I'm not talking at it. That was our feeling in July, and we addressed the bulk, the mass of the new addition, and felt that the siding itself minimized it. I might summarize it for who was here. So that was our explanation for it at that time, and I'm not sure my opinion has changed any on that.
Well, you know, I agree. I was going to say, make a similar comment. The picture of the front view of the house that we have here is basically looking from right in front of it. You have to go clear to the end of the street to get that view, and in the summer you still have that tree covering where the addition is proposed. When you turn onto Jefferson Street, all you see is this beautiful house with this front porch. You don't see that side of the house at all. And frankly, even when you get right up to the house, like you do in the picture that's in the packet, that right side of the house is pretty much hidden. I do feel for the neighbor that the neighbor doesn't want a second-story window looking down. But if there are trees there that block her view through the nice months, the months that she would most likely be in her yard, it doesn't seem to me that it makes all that much difference, especially if the applicant is willing to build a fence at their own expense that could shield the neighbor's privacy. And face it, I mean, we live in an urban neighborhood, and it's not like we live on acreage. So I think there are ways to mitigate and solve that situation and keep the neighbor happy and have her maintain her privacy, but give a growing family in a modern world a way to live in a home that they love, that they've obviously cared for very well, put a lot of time and love into, and stay in the neighborhood. And that's what we want. We want good, loving families with children playing in the street. And if we don't allow them to do this kind of thing, we're not going to have that in this neighborhood.
I agree with everything you just said. The only thing that I can see that looks a little is all the roof I see. It's kind of, when you look at it like this picture, all the new roof that's going on there kind of takes away from the house.
I was going to address that. Mr. Basinger reminded me that Acre is somewhat deceptive when you look at it because there's not that three-dimensionality to it. So you'll lose some of that roof when you see it in 3 dimensions. But also just the landscape and the surrounding area kind of eats up that. You got the hillside to the right that just kind of diminishes it by proportion.
Yeah, but also if it is on a hillside and you're down, you really aren't going to see a lot of that roof anyway. Unless you're
one of the pictures, demonstrates that.
Any other comments?
I see you sketching, too.
I did. So, I get what everybody's saying. I sketched something while we were talking, and I'm not as good as Todd or quick on my feet, but our other board member, but I pretty much agree with what everybody's saying. I get it, but I also have to try and walk the line a little. So, on that respect, I get everything everybody's saying. I agree with that, and I also have to think about what we're supposed to live by, and it gets frustrating. And I was just playing with the back of your house. If perchance there was a way to get something in the back that minimized a footprint that still got you what you wanted, and go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, again, I mean, I could probably come up with something off the back of the house and met all the criteria. And adhere to the strictest letter of the law, and it might be the ugliest thing you've ever seen. And it's, I just...
No, I hear you. And I'm just, when I'm playing with this, I mean, if you bumped it, if you went, just talking, you went out 12 feet, basically something like this, you went right here, you took where this bedroom or whatever you call it is, you take that line straight out, but from the back of the house 12 feet. You come and you get 2 bedrooms out of that, reconfigure your bathroom, so laundry and bathroom. And then at the same time, have a 4-foot covered porch that goes to the end that serves like as an outdoor mudroom or whatever to your back porch, and it all kind of fits together and out of sight, out of mind. Your footprint going into the back is like 10 by 12. It's pretty tiny, and it's a single-story addition. You get 2 bedrooms out of this that are probably the same square footage, if not bigger, than what you're proposing on the front.
I'm sorry, you get 2 bedrooms.
You have to kind of see what these 2 doors are. You create this like small little hall so it's not like you're walking straight from the kitchen in. You have a little alcove with a door that goes into this little bedroom with closets. This door, you walk down to get to this side with closets, window, and then while you're out, you build a covered porch in the back.
Where's our laundry room?
Laundry would get implemented into this bathroom because you just gain 2 or 3 feet. Coming straight across, this bathroom would be reconfigured. But see, in your addition, you have no plumbing, so that's more affordable.
Yeah.
So, and this is a single story that would tie into the roof that you have, but
the cost, and not to say we're on a limited budget, obviously, the cost is somewhat of a secondary issue. If we can come up with something that was feasible, and it costs a little bit more, and we can move forward, I'd be open to that. But again, I could take a look at it if that's what needs to happen. But
it's a possibility.
Yeah, I don't want to go through option B that doesn't look good with the structure, just because it's strict adherence to the criteria. I'd rather do nothing.
Yeah.
No house. Yeah.
Just notify him and see if.
The shed roof that you have now on that bedroom, then goes to a hipped roof to what looks to be the bathroom laundry room. You can take that roof off and take that shed roof from the bedroom straight back, and it becomes, as it leaves the house, a gable.
Yeah.
And then you have a shed roof for the porch that comes into that gable with a small valve.
And I'm not saying that it's not possible. I'm just expressing reservations, and we could take a look at it. We did have actually Todd Iceland come out, and when we were looking at hiring him as an architect for this project, and look at some of the different options that we were considering. And this is kind of where we landed with him. Obviously, we didn't move forward.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we do? I'm hearing what people are saying.
One thing is someone can
Make a motion.
see Google and then you're able to see the three votes for both the election and you want to get the 3 votes, usually a couple of them. This would be that's 3 options. One, deny the application, adopt staff findings.
Deny the application and adopt staff findings would be option number 1. 2, approve the application and provide directions for staff to return with revised findings at the September 8th meeting for the final adoption. And both Mr. Richard and I have been writing down some of your comments, so we're about halfway to the kind of findings we need to come back with the revised findings in 2 weeks for the formal adoption. Or 3, a request that the applicant submit some revised drawings at the next meeting on the 28th.
But you're listing a 4th, that it can be approved by the board with what's in the packet.
Right, but I do need revised findings, so that's really number 2. What we can't, because there's a staff report that recommends denial. What we need to make an application final is we need to come up with revised findings. So in a sense, you'd be replacing my staff report findings with your own. And while it can't really be done very well at the night of the hearing, what works the best is for me to gather your talking points, what you're giving me. I put together a new document in 2 weeks, and then you do the formal adoption of findings. So you make a vote tonight, and then you make a secondary vote in 2 weeks. The applicant is moving forward. It's just the second vote on the 28th is to make it formal.
Yeah. Well, gosh darn it.
Isn't that 1 week?
It's 2 weeks. Everything you proposed looks, you know, but then you've got these Secretary of Interior standards that we have to go by, and that always causes controversy. And that's where I keep going toward, is I've got to think about how it, yeah.
I might suggest you have an applicant willing to go look at an alternative, and you know, Secretary of Interior standards are to mitigate as best as possible.
And on those Secretary of Standards, I agree with them 99% of the time. And the thing is, what I'm hearing from people on the board is what I also agree with is it's at the end of a road. You can't really see it, but at the same time, you can't predicate certain guidelines by a position of a house. You've got to look at the house in the front and everything else. Everything else is dead. The street doesn't go through. Nobody's going to drive by and see it all the time. But you have to take the house as a whole and not so much just because it's on a dead end. That kind of negates these standards.
I don't think that's true, because they are guidelines. They're not mandates. And I think that they have extenuating circumstances. Guidelines are meant to be followed when you can follow them and when it's logical to follow them. And then when you have extenuating circumstances, guidelines, you know, are implemented where you can and where you can't, then it's up to the board.
I would agree with that too. There are extenuating circumstances, and not every house can be under a black and white. Right.
Well, I'd like to test out a motion if I can, and do we have to go?
Well, yeah, go for it.
So, see if I can do this right. I move that we,
You made a request for
Yes, you did. What was from discussion?
I'm not sure that you moved for a continuance or you requested the record to be left open, but there was a request for continuance made, I understand. At an initial hearing on a land use process, once a request for continuance is made, it has to be granted.
By the public.
Yes. Any party at any time can request a continuance.
I don't think it was requested, it was suggested that it be moved. Correct?
You may interpret that
Well, we
request
have to
as you want.
rewind and hear it.
Suggested that it be continued to, and maybe that's how to resolve this.
Continue, but, yeah. So for whatever reason, like,
I think both issues can be addressed, and I think there was a motion about to be on the table. I don't think that negates this issue.
But any person under 197.763 can request to leave the record, request a continuance or to leave the record open. I'm not sure that Mr. Griff's request was that. It was a suggestion to leave the record open. So you may decide whether or not that was a.
I think that the record's going to be open regardless.
you know,
I'm not sure the record's still open.
I did close. And once that happens, I'm done with. I can shut down the public hearing. Yeah, because we've been talking. No.
and you know, I'm not trying to ram something through. I don't think those of us on the board who have a certain opinion are going to change our opinion necessarily, but I'm willing to be open-minded and listen to other things as well. I just don't want to cause the applicant additional money to be spent on plans necessarily, or to lose time if he wants to do something before the bad weather. So I don't know if those are factors involved. I certainly don't. I'm not trying to push something through and forbid the public from having any more input than they need. I don't know if it's appropriate if the applicant has any responses to that.
There are always additional factors.
The record's closed, the applicant doesn't have any more responses.
So the record is closed.
Okay, so the record's open. Then Ms. McGriff made a motion to continue the hearing. I think the continuance request has to be granted.
That's fine.
So then we're done.
You need to continue the matter to a date certain.
But if I continue it,
I'd like to give the applicant some direction in conjunction with that continuance. I wouldn't want to at least go away.
yeah,
blind.
without knowing what to do.
And I would also like to have the record reflect whether Ms. McGriff had the authority of the neighborhood association to make the motion for the continuance, or if she's doing that as in her individual capacity as just a resident of the neighborhood. You asked for continuance.
But it was, I believe you stated it was for you. You weren't representing the neighborhood. Is that correct?
Yeah, and then
Oh, so then you were?
I was.
Okay.
This is apology to you for point of clarification, not because of mine. There were a couple of items that somehow or another went through the cracks, did not get to us in a timely manner. This was one of them, and the other one was the one you continued. So I was at somewhat of a very much disadvantage in getting responses from the neighborhood. There were other items that I did bring before the association at our last meeting. These two, I did not receive them.
So what you're saying is you didn't have the packet on this at your last meeting? The packet that
Not
we
the
have
revised materials, no. So I
since July? You haven't had anything?
not since the July material. So I, as usual, contact our chairman and say, look, I need to go to the board. I don't have the material. I'm going to have to respond when I get there because I have not seen it. So I'm just my suggestion was I did not make a formal motion. I suggested in order to try to mitigate both sides of this issue that maybe you ought to look at some suggestions and continue it. That was it. So point of clarification.
But Denise, again, I know we go through this all the time, and I'm sorry that I have to do it again, but I'm still, I just want confirmation that your request for a continuance is your personal request and not a formal request from the neighborhood association, at least at this point.
We'll be taking this information back to our steering committee to verify or dispute what I have requested tonight. I am representing the neighborhood association. I am not representing myself.
Okay, I don't think you have the authority to do that under the bylaws of the neighborhood association.
Oh, again, sorry, a point of information this may help resolve. There was some miscommunication on getting Ms. McGriff the information she needed for this, so I think in her capacity as neighborhood association chair requesting continuance to be able to look through this information is, I don't think a valid request, but because you did not get timely transmittal of this.
Okay.
This new testimony militates even further for a continuance if Ms. McGriff did not get the materials within the 7 days required by law.
She's not the transmittal. The initial transmittal.
I guess my point is whether that's continued or not, there's still going to be an limbo. So there's got to be some sort of direction, and Ken was going to say something.
I was just going to say, let's not all walk away without leaving something
on the table. Yeah,
some direction.
And I guess I'm so confused. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Nope.
I guess I'm not clear. Did the neighborhood association not get the materials in a timely
The
manner?
initial transmittal was not sent in a timely manner, but they did get, the agenda was mailed out at the.
I get all that, but I'm still at a point here where, so we continue it for the next one. What's that going to do? We're still going to.
Well, I do think you could give the applicant instruction on what you're thinking, what you want to do.
We can't make a motion as far as what we want to do.
No, I wouldn't be appropriate to take a vote at this point because the record is still open. You could give them some advice.
each individual, each of you members can take
Close
comment.
this public hearing and still give advice to us.
No, it's open.
You just didn't know what you're getting into. This was supposed to be resolved in July. No. Okay, then if we have to make this continued to the next meeting, we need to offer, while the hearing is still open, suggestions to you, so when you come back, you have something.
Or you don't have to make advice, you can just leave it as it is.
It's not doing anything for us. If we leave this where it's at, it's not doing anything for them.
Sometimes when you talk to architects, you don't have to, you can use the plans that you have and you can redline those and you can talk to them about possibilities and they may not charge you just for talking about it. And maybe that's what you can have with next time is the feasibility of doing it, but with John's suggestion versus the feasibility of doing it this way. How much are you going to gain? Cost versus square footage, design versus compatibility. Those kinds of things we can look at next time. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Any other suggestions to give to them to come up with when they come back? Basically, I think what the board's saying is nobody has a problem with this, and we can approve, or because this has to be continued, based on what we've been talking about. There could be approval on this with quite a bit of different criteria for approval that has to go to staff. I think for the betterment of the board and what's been said by the staff, the secretary guidelines, each situation has its own mitigating circumstances. I think in order for this board to be clear of what our job is and what has to happen based on the criteria, if I'm making sense, that you've got to come up with another solution so that we can look at both, so that we can draw our conclusions because we've exhausted possibilities. I'm looking at it as you still have another possibility to look at here. It's frustrating, it's inconvenient, I understand that, but we also have to follow something. And we're all on the same page that it looks great, it's at the end of a road, it's bettering the neighborhood, it's keeping you guys there, that's the point. But if we just went for however we felt and what feels good, then it's kind of missing the point of what we're supposed to be adhering to. So if that even makes any sense, I think you've got to come back with an alternative. That alternative needs to get done fairly quickly so that the McLaughlin neighborhood and us can see it. I don't know if that's possible within 2 weeks, but I think based on the drawings you've got here and based on what Cindy's saying, it's quite true. If you've got an architect, they can pretty quickly generate something like this off the back at a pretty nominal price, I would think. And it could also be a matter of if they can help you out, everybody wins. So you can use that for the pocketbook. So I can give you this, and you can play with it. And I think that's where we've got to go. So for advice for continuance, other than being in limbo, that's what you need to do.
I'm assuming that the alternatives can be fairly preliminary in nature. I mean, I'm obviously not going to draft the entire.
Yeah, but what you're going to need to do is draw for sure. What I think you need to have is a floor plan, but this elevation and this elevation, which I think can be generated pretty easily, and a new roof line. Okay. So I wish I had a red pen. I could do it in red, but I'll give you this. So I think that's where we're at for the next 2 weeks. So you have some direction instead of going back and being in limbo. Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing.
We're not going to close the public hearing. We're going to continue the public hearing.
And we need to make a motion for continuance.
I can't close it now and then make a motion for continuance.
Closing the public hearing means that no more testimony can come in.
Yeah,
Forever.
Right, you don't want to do that.
and I'll continue this public hearing in 2 weeks. It stays open.
I wanted
Floating around.
to comment, though, just
Yeah.
before you do that. That I have a really strong feeling about this board not being in an obstructionist position. I've always tried to curtail what we do with that in mind, and with what Cindy had to say about guidelines versus mandates rings pretty strongly with me. And as I said earlier, I'm not disinclined to approve the design as it was originally drawn here. Personally am not convinced that it doesn't come within the guidelines.
Well, unfortunately, we can't approve it even if we wanted to
I
now.
know.
And I agree with you. We're all about working together and making a solution. That's usually 99.9% of the time how we're doing it.
Well, I guess what I'm really getting at here is I don't want to send you off to draw new plans if you don't have to. And I don't know how to resolve that tonight and still accommodate the continuation.
Yeah, and the only continuation here that we have is putting it out for 2 weeks so association can see it. You could say, no, I don't think we should have them doing drawings. Come back in 2 weeks and we're going to make a motion after we have testimony. That's kind of
I think that's practical.
right. And yeah, I'm trying to just tote the line, but I don't know. What's your thought?
I don't think you have to tote the line.
If I could do a point of information, based on what I've heard from the board tonight, I can have the findings available at the 28th. I think based on what I've heard, I can come up with revised findings. So regardless of having drawings or not, I should be able to have findings for the board to approve at the meeting on the 28th.
So it'll be the same amount of time total either way.
I guess the answer is you won't have to continue two more weeks for new findings. It could be resolved fully on the 28th.
Fully.
Having the applicant submit revised drawings or not. That's really
So we
material to,
You can just say no to that, negate that.
unless you want to.
You don't want to do it.
Well, I just, no, I don't really want you to either, so. Well, we can make a motion to continue, which sounds like we have to.
Well, I'd like to make a motion. I move that we continue this until September 28th.
I'll second that.
Ms. Hall?
Aye.
Mr. Basinger?
Aye.
Ms. Yates?
Aye.
Chair McLaughlin?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience. Are we closed? Can we stop and,
That matter is over.
okay, so we can talk and have,
This is general business now.
okay.
So close the public hearing. Formally do that.
Can I formally close? I don't think I have, I can't. Let's say,
Well, it's not, if the public hearing is, the public hearing is the hearing we're having tonight, and it continues on to the general business we're gonna talk about, which includes the Armageddon house, right?
well, that we have to keep the public hearing open for general business, too.
Public hearing when it's formed.
See, when you're here, if you're not here, we're always in trouble then. Holy cow. Well, I'll be sending in,
I know.
I'll be sending in my bill too to the city. Okay, so we have general business regarding the Ernie Kinger House, I don't want to say Ernie Kinger.
People do that with my name too. The G is soft.
I wanted to give the board an update on the Ermitinger House.
Yeah.
Is this the last commission meeting?
Yes, just a presentation of what occurred at the, right. Okay, for the board members that were not there, they, as you know, the city and the National Park Service were working together potentially and having the Francis Ermitinger House be taken over and administered by the Park Service as part of the McLaughlin House in Fort Vancouver. That sounds like it is not going to be moving forward. And in your packet, you'll see the update letter and commission report from Scott Archer, a Community Services Director, indicating that fact. Since the City Commission work session, I have been speaking with Denise Kai in our Parks Department, and she is moving forward with the bids from last year's RFP for the window repair. And we're trying to find out if we can utilize the bids that we received last year because they're a year old. If we can use the bids from last year, she will work with myself to make sure that the scope of work fits the historic review board policies for window repair. And if it does, I will write a staff memo and I'll CC the board that yes, the submitted scope of work meets the requirement for window repair. And they look to be starting this within the next couple of weeks.
I did hear a testimony from the caretakers of the house saying that even if there wasn't enough money to do all of the windows, but the most important windows were the front windows, and that we should definitely do those. So that could be plan B.
I know the bids range quite a large amount, and so they're looking at the different bids. And I think last year a lot of things were just put on hold, and so they didn't get really into the evaluation of which bid they wanted to move. Right now, they're working on windows, as far as I know.
Yeah.
They're going to continue what was started last fall, which was the RFP for the windows. The larger question is the windows does not resolve the maintenance.
There's no money.
Right. So, it's great that these windows are done, but on the review board end, maybe worth it at some point this winter to have another letter or another discussion with the city commission about kind of the larger next steps. I know they're doing that at the same time, so I want to coordinate to make sure we're not doing two things at once, that we're all working in the same direction.
Is the demo plan still on the table?
The code still exists.
Well, but ours are.
Our code is still there, and they are a designated landmark.
So, getting the windows being repaired and broken money after that because the road was really part of the problem that's causing the window problem, which is exacerbating the problem. So, is fixing the windows going to be not making a difference at all because they can get damaged?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're correct in that if they just fix the windows and walked away, it doesn't resolve the larger issue. Right, but I mean, wait 2 or 3 more years to look at the next phase. So, money has been set aside for the windows as a budget order. That's the only thing that's been set aside. So, other funding is more of a budgetary discussion with the city commission, and that's really the next step after work on the windows, which were already budgeted for last fall.
Denise, I was really concerned about the roof too, and Marsh Harding said that right now she's really concerned with the windows and much less concerned with the roof.
There in the last 6 months when it was not even raining hard, and it just got more than you thought because they're avoided it. Just some of you I'm in a financial position right now with the McLaughlin Memorial Association, and I have a lot of discussions with the Park Service, and I think it's not that they don't want to. To be honest with you, just keep sort of between the lines. For those of you who've been there and know what they have responsibility for, aside from the land bridge, which they just finished, they got some federal money for that, but it wasn't all of their money, all of the federal money. Some of it came out of their budget. They haven't had what they call a base increase through the entire Bush administration, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any coming in this next 2 years either because of the way the partisan politics are going. So they're really operating on a budget that's probably 8 years old with no raises or inflation or anything or new staff or nothing. I mean, they are, they are literally robbing Peter and Peter to pay Paul. I mean, they're stretched, very stretched. And they just got the Vancouver Barracks and said, here, you're going to take care of them and you're going to revamp them and you're going to fix them up. I don't know if you've ever seen the Vancouver Barracks or not. It's super lovely shape. They have the bird maintenance, and it's not just one building, it's like a building. They're just, I don't know. I just don't know how to do it. It's theirs. This will be served journals.
I think, just to reiterate, Renee mentioned that none of this got on tape, but that Ms. McGriff was mentioning this house strap the Park Service has been with their existing fiscal formula and obligations based on the last 8 years, and that's some of the frustration on their end. While they would love to take on the Erminger House, a lot of it are mitigating factors for them not moving forward, and that's just paraphrasing what Ms. McGriff was commenting on.
I'd like to just mention a couple of things that I'll happen after hearing that people who weren't at the hearing or didn't see it may not be aware of. Even though the National Park Service isn't in any position to take over and buy the Erminger House now, they said if they ever do, they want to be sure that technically they are involved in everything that happens with the house from that board, which is great for us because they know a lot and they're there to help. So they're a great resource to have. And then the second thing is, I know that the city is doing what they can. They're very strapped for money. Our staff works terribly hard and overtime, and unless we're the squeaky wheel, it doesn't get done because there's just too many things to do. So I think we need to continue to be the squeaky wheel and get updates on this all the time because we can't go through another winter without the windows being fixed.
I will, at every Strip Review Board meeting, I will put an Erminger update as a line item, and one of the updates may just be I have no updates. But this will put a tickler for every meeting that they'll just be the default until you tell me to stop putting it as a default. How's that?
Okay, good. I just want you guys to know also, just for looking on the record, that I wasn't here when the house was moved, but I did have the pleasure of getting to know Mrs. Powers while she was still alive. And she put a lot into that, and we talked with a number of Mark, who were the contractors, Mark Foley and Dan Howard were the contractors that moved the house and cabinet structures. Furniture, this work would be bringing out Erminger, for instance. They put a lot of time and effort into the property, and it's just been sort of, again, because of the priorities that is on until she really cared about that house. She probably cared about that house more than some of the other issues fixed up, even her own, and because it was so significant to the history of Oregon and what it really means and all the things that's in place there. It's a great resource, and I appreciate the Jason said because I think you do need to keep doing that. I don't know if any of you saw, but there's a letter to the editor of the paper about something. I don't know where the city had $10,000, but there was an article in the paper about $10,000 being used for a pole, and then people were writing in going, I just use it for something else. So there you go. I don't know if we need a pole right now, but maybe we need some to fix the original.
Yeah. All right. Got it. Okay. I got a question. I've always been reading this for every single item, and it says on here to be read before each item on the agenda. You're saying I only have to read it once when I do this.
Well, I have to read it once as long as the people who are here were here at the beginning.
Oh, so if somebody comes in halfway through, I've got to read it again.
For example, I'm not sure that Ms. McGriff was here at the beginning of
Yeah, so that's where maybe if I still did it on every item, then it covers whoever may be coming in or coming or going.
Because there were so few people in the audience, Mr. Griff wasn't here, there was just the applicants.
Yeah.
So I just presumed that since there wasn't anybody here, there were just the applicants.
It's not that we don't appreciate your dramatic reading. You're quite good.
Maybe I do need to jazz it up a little bit. I should maybe act it out.
But you do need to remember that even if you don't do the full reading, you do need to do the ex parte contact bias, conflict of interest.
Gotcha.
Component, different property.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so in 2 weeks, we'll have this and findings. We'll have toll.
And I have yet to receive a grant application that, we may have one of those.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions?
Anybody want any more brownies?
Thank you, everybody.